morning Year 6 and welcome to our second lesson via a video about writing to inform. And today we're going to be actually doing our writing about Alexander Fleming. Okay, so just to recap, our learning question for this journey is: what role did scientists of the past play in our understanding of the world today? And we've looked at numerous scientists so far, but over this week we've been particularly focusing on Alexander Fleming and his discovery of penicillin. Okay, today's task. As part of our learning towards answering this question, we're going to write an information text about Alexander Fleming. We've done some work towards that. So we're going to use our planning tools from yesterday, and we're going to do our writing today to inform others of his scientific legacy, which still helps people today. Okay, so our learning focus today, which you'd like to write at the top of your piece of writing, please, is I can write an effective information text about Alexander Fleming. Okay, so we're not just going to write anything, we want to make it effective, and we're going to use those tools we talked about yesterday to do that. Okay, so today we will, number one, remind ourselves of our notes and plans to focus our thinking. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do. We're then going to recap the features of a really good information text. We're then going to read our success criteria, but also make sure we understand the elements of it so we can apply them properly. Then we're actually going to start our writing, and while we do that, we're going to already rehearse in our head, maybe, or out loud if we want to, already rehearse what we're going to write, and then proofread it when we've written it as carefully as we can to make sure that we're minimising errors. And number 5, we're going to refer to the success criteria when we've finished and our box model as we're going along to make sure we're self-assessing and checking it as we go. And then number 6, at the end, when you've finished, have a little reflect back. How did you do? Evaluate how well you did and maybe what you could do to improve on it if you were to write it again. Okay, so number 1, reminding ourselves of our notes and plans to focus our thinking. Okay, in a moment you might want to pause this video, take a few moments to read back over the parts of your notes, my bullet pointed notes, or the comprehension text we read yesterday that you highlighted, to get the key points that you want to convey to your reader at the front of your mind. So go back over the things you highlighted yesterday so that those things, those really important things, are right at the front of your brain so that you can make sure that you include those in your writing. Okay, you might want to pause the video now. Okay. Next, you might want to read over your box model and your bubble map for the same reason. Have you missed anything? Okay, sometimes when you read over something with fresh eyes on a different day, you kind of pick up like obvious things that you forgot previously. Or alternatively, if there's nothing you've forgotten, is there anything you want to change, anything you're not happy with or you don't think is important? Have a look at that now. Okay, pause the video. Okay, welcome back. So, number 2, the second thing we're going to do today, we're going to recap the features of an information text. So we're writing to inform. So we structure the layout so that it's really easy for the reader to kind of navigate themselves through our piece of writing. So we're going to have a clear title, a subheading if you wish to use it. So you might want to structure your paragraphs using subheadings. You might even want to use bullet points maybe at some part of the text. Having those different devices really helps kind of like focus the reader and keep them interested. We'll want to make sure it's written in the past tense and in the third person consistently. We don't want any changes of tense or changes of person. And as I said yesterday, we want to keep that formal tone to the writing. Okay, this is factual information, and we want to convey that to our reader in a formal way, a clear way. Okay, so we're going to have a use of the passive voice, okay, and modal verbs as we talked about yesterday. One of the things you might want to use the passive voice for is when you're trying to inform people about something, you might want to repeat yourself, because that's one way of kind of really making sure that they understand what you're saying or they've understood what you've written for them. So you might want to use the passive by a way of repeating something. So earlier on in your text, you might want to write something about, I don't know, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. And then if you want to repeat the same fact but present it in a different way, you might want to present it in the passive voice. So you might want to put later on in the text, penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming. So you've changed it around. So you've repeated yourself, but you've not actually repeated the phrase or the sentence, which is helpful in making your writing more varied. Okay. Use of cohesive devices, varied clause structure. Okay, and we learned about when we did our work about Nelson that cohesive devices are really important about linking our whole text together. One of the things we didn't mention yesterday was the use of synonyms. So rather than repeating yourself, maybe repeating Alexander Fleming over and over again, you might want to use a pronoun, he maybe, or you might want to refer to him as something else, like a scientist. Okay, so try and think about how you could use synonyms, and obviously we talked about yesterday using adverbials to help link your writing together. I've got some examples further on in this video and also in your home learning document. Okay, we want to also vary our clause structure. This is really important to keep our writing interesting, okay, keep our reader engaged. We don't want the same kind of clauses coming up all the time. Okay, so what we want to do here is sometimes we might have a simple sentence made with a single clause. Sometimes we might want to have a multi-clause sentence starting with a subordinate clause maybe. In another sentence, you might want to put your subordinate clause at the end of your sentence. You might want to include a relative clause, parenthesis. Okay, you're varying it, and you might even want to have two main clauses and link them using a semicolon or a colon. We'll look more about that later on in the video. Okay, and obviously there's the 4 examples that we've already talked about over the last 2 lessons. Parenthesis, for extra detail, subordinate clauses I just mentioned. You might want to vary their position in a sentence to keep your writing interesting. Adverbials, really important. Adverbials tell you how something happened, when something happened, where something happened, how often it happened. We did a lot of work with that when we did the highwayman. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about colons later in the lesson. Okay, right, so number 3. Okay, the next thing we're going to do today is we're going to understand the elements of our success criteria. Okay, so I put your success criteria into your home learning document. It's just really something you can refer to as you're writing when you finish to make sure you've got all the ingredients of a brilliant piece of writing. So just to recap, we've already talked about those first few things. We've already talked about those. We've just already talked about that. We've already talked about that. So this one here, the use of adverbs, preposition and expanded noun phrases to add detail, precision and qualification. So we might want to use adverbs. They're just going to be used to give us more information, tell us more about maybe what kind of a person Alexander Fleming was. You know, I think the adverb carefully, messily, I don't know, what, something like that. Just gives the reader a little bit more information about him. And obviously we might want to use expanded noun phrases, but not in a fictional sense. We want to use those adjectives to tell us more about information that's factual. So they'd have to be factual adjectives to describe him, describe his discoveries or other things. Okay, we also want to make sure that our punctuation is spot on. Don't forget those capital letters for some of you, especially for names, etc. Have those commas to separate clauses and then a list. If you've used parentheses, have brackets, have your dashes if you've used them, or even separate them with commas if that's what you're going to use. And don't forget apostrophes as well. Okay, attention to detail is really important in year 6. Okay, well, as it is in every other year. Okay, we're also going to look really carefully at our spelling, and that for some of you who I know you don't always find spelling that easy, or what we're going to do there is just make sure that we pay particular attention to our spelling in the editing. Is there somebody at home that can help you check for spelling errors? Can you use a dictionary or spell checker? Okay, and then obviously, as always, I'm showing you the letter join font on all the things I'm sending you, so make sure that we've got legible, fluent join handwriting that's using the letter join style. And then finally, can you get a colon in there, or a semicolon, a dash or a hyphen in there? Okay, so we get that advanced punctuation. Remembering that colons and semicolons are used between 2 main clauses. Okay, clauses that make sense on their own. Okay, now I've included this in your home learning document. A little bit like the I space thing. It's just going to help you, some adverbials to help you with cohesion. Another going over again about how to use some different types of punctuation. And then there's some ideas if you want to use some subordinate clauses. So here's some conjunctions you can use. And remember, you can either start a sentence with a subordinate clause or you can end it with a subordinate clause. You can flip them around to vary your clause structure. Okay, now here's an example for you. So I've taken this example from the comprehension text, and we're just going to see where this author has used some of those techniques to make the writing interesting and engaging for the reader. Okay, so I'm not going to read it all because you've read it already, but if I just click the first thing, we can see here that they've included a relative clause, which is also a type of parenthesis, okay, extra information. And this has told us more about the bacteria. Okay, so it's a relative clause because it's a relative of the noun, the bacteria. It's telling us more information about the noun. Okay, this author has also used some subordinate clauses before he went on holiday. Okay, that's a subordinate clause because it doesn't make sense on its own. Because his discovery saved many lives during the Second World War, that's a subordinate clause because it doesn't make sense on its own. These are both examples of where the author has used the subordinate clause at the end of the sentence, or the second part of the sentence. But instead, one of these, if this was you editing your work, you might want to choose one of them and swap it round so that you started the sentence with the subordinate clause. So, for example, the first sentence would be, before he went on holiday, comma, Fleming left a jar of mould in his laboratory. Or in the second example, you could start the sentence with because. So, because his discovery saved many lives during the Second World War, comma, Fleming was hailed as a hero. Okay, remember, when you haven't got that subordinating conjunction linking the two clauses together, you have to use a comma to separate them. So if you're going to start with a subordinate clause, you need to put a comma in between the two clauses. Okay, next, the things in green. Adverbials, use of adverbials. Okay? It helps the reader kind of set when things are happening, like kind of structure it in their minds. And the last example we've got here is actually a colon. Now I've changed this. It was a semicolon in the text, and a semicolon might be correct, but I'm more inclined to think it should be a colon there, because we use a semicolon when the two main clauses are closely related or related to one another, but we use a colon when the second clause tells you more about the first clause. And I believe that's the case in this example here. So I'll read it to you, that sentence. This was Fleming's breakthrough. The moment he realised that some antibacterial agent had stopped the bacteria growing. Now, I believe, I might not be right, but I think that second clause is telling you more about the first. The second one's telling you more about his breakthrough. Okay, so that's an example about how you could use a semicolon or a colon. Remember, you could actually use a coordinating conjunction between two main clauses. Fanboys, that fanboys work we did before, for and nor, but I've forgotten what the other ones are because I haven't got it in front of me. I'm sure you can remember it better than I can. Okay, right, moving on. Okay, number 4. Orally rehearse and proofread our writing carefully as we write to minimise errors. Okay, so you might want to start writing now. But before you actually put pen to paper, have a little play it through in your head. You can actually say it out loud. That's why I've written orally rehearse if you want to. But what I do when I write, I actually kind of like say it out loud in my head. So only I can hear it. So for example, I might start with this sentence in my head. Alexander Fleming was born in Scotland in 1881. Okay, I might say that in my head. I'll think about it. All right. Am I giving the reader all the information they need here? Can I make it a bit more interesting? Can I pack more information into that sentence? I'll have a little think. Oh, I'll say it again. Alexander Fleming, who was born. Okay, right. Well, maybe I want to say something about what he's famous for, or particularly where he was born, or what particular date he was born. So I might then improve on that in my head before I actually commit it to paper. So this is what I've come up with in my head. Oh, Alexander Fleming, a bacteriologist, who changed the world forever with his discoveries, was born in Ayrshire, Scotland, on the 6th of August 1881. Okay, right, so you might want to start writing now. Pause the video and please start and then come back to this later. Okay, now, so partway through our writing, we might want to stop and then refer to our success criteria that I've given you, or the box model that you created yesterday. Okay, keep stopping and referring it to it, just as you would keep stopping and reading about things that you've written already. Okay, so we talked about this yesterday. I've changed it slightly. So our purpose is writing to inform. The reader in this case is someone's dad who's going to read it. Okay, the effect. What effect do I want to have it on the reader? They need to, at the end of this, know where he was born. They need to know who he was, what he was famous for. I'm going to include lots of important, interesting facts to keep them interested. I need to tell them about his most famous discovery and keep them engaged, as I said. Now, the success criteria. If you want to, if there are things that you've missed off this, you could always add them from the success criteria I've given you today onto your box model. And then obviously we talked about the key vocabulary. Is there any other vocabulary you've come up with, you thought about, that you could include? Okay, right. Okay, so hopefully at some point today you will have finished your text. Have a little read through of it. Maybe get someone at home to read it out to you aloud, because sometimes when we check our own work, we don't see the errors because we read it how we think it should read rather than what it actually says. So maybe you could get your brother or sister or somebody at home to read it to you and check it for any errors. Okay, how did you do? Okay, have a think. Have a look back at the success criteria. Why don't you read the success criteria and tick the things that you've actually achieved on it? And when you've done that, kind of evaluate it. Write a little reflection at the bottom. Don't worry if you haven't got a purple pen. Do it however. Even if you think about the reflection, have a discussion with someone about it. Okay, what aspects were you pleased with? What were you pleased about? What could you improve upon if you were to write it again, or write something similar again? Okay, right, well done, Year 6. Okay, please send me your completed writing. I really look forward to reading it. And really well done on working so hard this week. And don't forget to keep checking on your mould investigation over the weekend. And I'll speak to you again on Monday. Okay, thanks.